Welcome back to the Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity Podcast. If you are new to the podcast, the Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity Podcast is all about optimizing the health of the ageless athlete. So we do tons of different interviews and podcasts on nutrition, exercise, and wellness practices. So if you are new to the podcast, make sure you subscribe so you can stay up to date on all of our latest content. In today's episode, my special guest is Joey Hauss. Joey is a breathwork specialist, a Wim Hof method breathing instructor, and a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Oh, and on top of that, he's a U.S. Marine veteran. In today's conversation, Joey and I talked about the benefits of breathwork, meditation, ice baths, what Wim Hof breathing is, how to get the benefits of breathwork, ice baths, how to get into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and so much more. If you like today's podcast, make sure you subscribe, rate, review, share with your friends, and enjoy this episode with Joey Hauss. Joey, how are you, brother?
I'm well, Sean. I'm very excited to be here, but yeah, doing really well.
Nice, man. Where does this podcast find you?
I'm in Stevenson Ranch, California. I'm right next to Six Flags Magic Mountain. I'm in an area where there's not much, but there is a big famous amusement park. So that's the landmark I refer people to.
I love that. And are you originally from that area?
I'm like Southern California. I was born and raised in the San Fernando Valley, went to Calabasas High School, go Coyotes. But yeah, that's where, like in this general area, I'm a SoCal boy.
Nice, man. And so you know, I was taking a look at your bio a little bit, not only on your own website, but also the Wim Hof website and that kind of stuff. And I definitely want to dive into a lot of the different hats that you wear. I obviously got first exposed to you through the Kyle Cease Absolutely Everything past community. And I didn't know what it was, but there was a buzz around and about you. And I quickly understood why, because you've just got one of these beautiful personalities that's a blend of masculinity, but also gentleness, kindness, and like vulnerability. And I think you just wear that so well. And I think everybody kind of resonates with that.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Like I can't even explain like where it comes from. I guess just like my general interests, things that I've gravitated towards. And then just as I gravitate towards those things, they leave imprints, definitely. Because I definitely feel that part of my personality comes from growing up. Wrestling is definitely a part of it. And then like with the wrestling, when like wrestling stopped, I knew I needed some kind of physical outlet. So then joined the Marines, and then that kind of left an imprint. And then through that, eventually found jiu-jitsu, which left an imprint, and the personal development community and coaching kids and all these different things that, you know, just like life kind of led me to. But then also those things I do feel kind of leave an imprint on the personality. So yeah, like all those different things were all very exciting to me, either at one point in my life or currently. And yeah, I feel like they also fit into the individual parts that I ended up going to as well. So I appreciate all the kind words.
I have a question for you, like right off the bat, because I, you know, can tell a person who's willing to be open and vulnerable right away. It's kind of one of my superpowers. And
for sure.
I have a question for you. Are you comfortable on camera?
Yeah, I'm comfortable.
And you're comfortable talking in front of audiences and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was also developed. I think when I was in middle school, I remember I was in band. It was like a class of about 70 plus kids. And I didn't care. Like my parents knew the band teacher. I played trumpet. I hated it. And at one point I remember there was an election within the band class as far as who wants to be president, vice president. We'll take people who will who do you want to elect? So they took volunteers. And I remember one kid is a goof because I was like last chair in trumpet. I hated the class, and like kind of like under his breath, I'm like, Joey Hauss, as far as and so the teacher was like, okay, Joey, come and say why you should be president of this band class. It's kind of just the format that it was. Definitely not ready for it. Came up to the podium and I literally just hemmed and hawed for what felt like an hour. And I was probably 20 seconds. and just like the nervous sweat coming until the band teacher went, all right, Joey, get off. And then came up to the podium and was like, listen, if you're going to come up here, the least you can do is say your name. And I remember just being so embarrassed and being like, okay, that will never happen again. I will eventually get comfortable doing it. So then like look for opportunities to speak in front of people, and to the point where I would just kind of, okay, this is not as bad. And eventually I found enjoyment in doing it.
No, it's funny because, obviously I have a wrestling background as well. And I found that like almost a story like that prepares you for wrestling, because there
Yes.
is pretty much no other sporting event that you're going to be a part of, especially as a young man, that is going to put you in such a vulnerable position. So do you call on that experience as preparation a little bit for like the world
Yeah.
of wrestling?
And also that like, so I felt that prepared me for wrestling, which then prepared me for my larger speaking roles in life. I also remember when I first started doing stand-up comedy, I kind of dabbled in that, did things like the Comedy Store. So got to perform in these kind of iconic places. But I remember the very first time doing comedy, and it was like I did a stand-up comedy class that you did stuff in the class and then you performed in front of a group at an actual comedy club. And I remember everyone being so nervous and in their head about it. But I remember like years of wrestling, like before wrestling, like before you get out on the mat and compete, that's the worst time when you're in the wings, waiting for them to call your name. And so you develop tools and techniques. And for the most part, it's just like hopping around, just kind of getting that nervous energy out. And I remember feeling that way in my body, but immediately recognizing like, all right, Joey, as soon as you get up on that microphone and say 2 or 3 words, you're going to be good. Right now is the worst part. So like I found a little corner in the comedy club and was just like hopping and just treating it as if it were a wrestling tournament. And I remember being, okay, got it. Like that's all this is. Just you're going to be nervous right now, but when you get up there, you're going to be in the moment. You're going to be in flow. So just right now, just like, move this nervous energy out. And so I felt that wrestling also prepared me for like other speaking gigs, because I got it. I'll be nervous a little bit beforehand, but as soon as it's go time, then you get to be in flow and not worry about it. So just deal with the anxiety right now. Just, move your body and get rid of that anxiety. And so, yeah, like I feel it. A lot of things in my life, I feel like kind of sandwiched together, where other things prepared me for that thing, and then that thing prepared me for other things as well,
Nice, nice. And I want to learn a little bit more about the wrestling, and so how did your career end up? And I know for me personally, again, I think there's probably some overlap in our story a little bit, that I found that like once my career was over, I realized I had a huge identification and attachment to being a wrestler and being this person that had everybody's eyes on them. Did you feel the same way? And how did your career end up?
Yeah. So like I started wrestling because it was just a thing my oldest brother did. And I remember being just like the youngest. I didn't have as many kind of activities that my parents did. I'm 4 out of 5 children. And so I remember being like, wow, like I love this. Mom, I want to do this. I want to be involved in this. So I kind of got involved in like little wrestling clubs a little before high school. And then in high school, I really wanted to play football. So I was playing football, and then the wrestling coach, because I was a defensive lineman, was like, oh, you should do wrestling. I was like, I actually want to do wrestling. Perfect. I'm going to do wrestling. And so fell in love with just how ridiculously hard the practices were. Then in college, they got even more intense, with like 8-mile warm-up runs, calisthenics, drilling, wrestling, just like these grinders of practices. But I remember like, oh, this is what I need. Because when I'm sitting in a classroom, just bored, like I'm like, I can't do this. But when I'm in the wrestling room, I'm like, this is my element. This is what I need more of. And then when I got done wrestling in college, as you said, like there was this identity crisis. I was an assistant manager at a Blockbuster. And I remember they were about to promote me to manager. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, like this is how people get stuck in life, because of the time they were going to offer me was like $50,000 a year. And I was like 20 years old. And to me, it's like, oh, like that's like an amount of money I won't know how to say no to. I won't know how to walk away from this job. I need something. And wrestling was the thing. What do I do now? And that's when I decided to join the Marines. I'm like, okay, there's definitely commonality here, because the whole thing with the Marines is like, even in the recruitment process, it's like this, like, it sucks. Like, does that interest you? It sucks a lot. Every day is hard. You're always going to be tired. You're always going to be like a little bit dirty and hungry and thirsty. Does that appeal to you? And I was like, yes, that appeals to me a lot. Sign me up. And so because of, I knew that was a thing I needed. When it was gone, I was like in this kind of space. I'm like, oh, like I'm just kind of coasting through life right now in this job that's not really appealing to me. How do I get out? Where I'm like, oh, here's a thing that's similar to wrestling in that capacity. And then from the Marines, then I started finding jujitsu as well. And there was like a little bit of jujitsu within my time wrestling. There were people that would come into practices that were really just jujitsu guys trying to work on their wrestling. And so it was always a thing that was also in the back of my mind. And then when I started doing jujitsu, then it was, okay, here's that thing that like that void that wrestling filled. But at the same time with jujitsu, like this is a thing that you can do forever. As you know, as a wrestler, there are no old wrestlers. You're an old wrestler at 30 years old. At 30 years old, your body is just destroyed. That's it. If you have no plans of going to the Olympics anytime soon, that's it. You're done wrestling. And so with jujitsu though, like going to these classes and seeing there are people 60, 70 years old, still going strong. There are a couple of guys at my gym that are in their 70s that if I'm not careful, I'll get tapped out, that are like legit good at what they do. And so here's the thing, that you can still do it even as you get older, and that it's fun. It's I'm not doing it as far as like trying to compete anymore. I don't have to maintain a certain set of grades in order to do the sport. That it is just like this, okay, cool. I have a thing in my life forever now, as long as my body allows, that I have. And so, yeah, jujitsu really helped fill that void long term. And I feel like the Marines was like this immediate, as I was going through an existential crisis, like, okay, yeah, Marines, that's the thing I want to do. But yeah, wrestling definitely, it attracts a certain kind of person. And as I said, like that, it attracts a certain kind of person. And then once you're in it, it molds a kind of personality type.
So it's almost contradictory, the kind of field that you're in now in terms of like self-development and that kind of stuff. And then you're like, oh, I'm a Marine also. How does that
Yeah.
work? And what did you learn from it?
Yeah, it's interesting because like it is like knowing that I just have also different aspects of my personality that need to be fed and nourished in different ways. And because like I feel like with wrestling in the Marines, there was a part of me that needs to just kind of grind a thing out. Like I'm a glutton for punishment. Like, all right, that's hard. I'll do it. Hey, does no one else want to do that thing? I'll do that thing. Because that also applies with my Wim Hof method, like what I'm doing now as far as getting into the ice bath. I see how that attracts a certain kind of person, because I feel the Wim Hof method I teach is kind of like the middle between those, the wrestler Marine world of, hey, here's a hard thing, but hey, just do it. And then that kind of personal development world, which I found a little bit more in jiu-jitsu, in that you're still doing the hard thing, but there are tools and techniques that you can use that you're a little bit more in flow, that it's less grinding out the result and more kind of being patient, waiting for the right moment to then utilize your energy. And I find that within like personal development, that there are so many things, especially in this, like the evolving out loud community, because there's also a part of me that resonates with like the Tony Robbins energy of, hey, you can influence your own energy. You can get yourself inspired in the space where it's like, oh, I have like more energy in my body to get the hard thing that needs to get done. But then also there's a softer approach as well, that hold on, let me meditate. Let me see, does this even really need to get done by me in this particular way? Is there a better way? Like, why am I even doing this thing? And so really kind of waiting out the appropriate answer for any kind of life circumstance. And so like meditation, all that kind of resonated from doing jujitsu, which was a martial art. And that's also where, with the Wim Hof method, finding breath work, using your breath to keep yourself calm, And so like they seem different, but in my body, in my mind, I see them as connected in this really kind of unique way that sometimes you do need to step on the gas and really get the thing done. But sometimes it's like, hold on, let's pump the brakes right now. Let's wait for our right opportunity. Let's also see if this is necessary. And so there is I find them like balancing each other.
Yeah, there definitely has to be a yin and a yang to everything.
Yeah.
But more importantly, as we look at that, I want to know from you, do you have reference points or ways that you kind of know that you're overdoing one to the other? Because one of the biggest things that I've always kind of meditated on is the where do I focus? Because obviously, a person who's going through discomfort and pain, there's a thought of leaning into that and being like, you know what, you transcend and you move through the fire. But then there's also a yang to that where it's like, you also have to, or potentially you can spend time putting your attention on where you want to go or what you want to be. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that I resonated with, especially when we did some breath work things that I attended, where you were like, recall a time that you were loved, recall a time where you triumphed in the face of adversity. And I go, man, I don't do that as much. I'm a much more of a person to lean into the pain kind of guy. And I want to
Yeah.
get your take on it in terms of like how you utilize those tools and when you utilize them.
Yeah, because I'm like honestly, I'm obsessed with finding flow state.
Mm,
And when I'm in flow state, then anytime I'm actively in it, it's like I know I'm in it because of I stop worrying about what I need to do next. Like I stop being motivated by, oh, how much money do I have or what's my current status in life? When I'm in that flow state, it's like, oh, got it. I understand that like life, like where I'm at right now is perfect. All the bad, everything that didn't seem like it was working out before led me to this moment right now. And like, I feel everything is in perfect alignment.
mm,
And so when I start feeling when I'm not, and as I said, it's like kind of, even when you notice if you're trying to balance yourself, it's like a little this way. And then it's like, oh, I have to counterbalance. And so sometimes I do feel myself like I'm constantly like, all right, when I'm in that motivated stage, trying to get these things done. But then all of a sudden I feel myself more and more burnt out where I'm just like, I'm exhausted. Things are getting done, but then I'm just kind of going through the motions of getting those things done. And it doesn't have like that same kind of like that fuel. And so I'm like, okay, I need to maybe relax more. I haven't been meditating as much. I haven't been doing the things that kind of keep that nervous system at that steady pace. And there are also times where I go too deep in, I'm going to do nothing. There was a period of time that I made a goal of not making any goals for a period of time.
mm.
That was all right for this period of time. I'm not going to strive to meditate every day. Like whatever I just feel like doing, I'm going to do. But then you start recognizing, like then there's like a lethargy starts to come in. Like I feel like a little bit stagnant. I feel like, yo, I haven't done anything like this past month. And so I just kind of just judge within the energy of my own body as far as, am I doing enough? Am I doing too much? Because I know what it's like to be in that flow state. I feel once you've found it, or like at least for me, it became this obsession to really maintain it. Because when I know I'm in that flow state, I'm like, okay, got it. I know what's really important. I know what my real priorities are. And I've maintained that flow state for several months on end. And then I catch myself like will lose it for then months on end. And so it is just a kind of a balancing act and recognizing how I'm feeling, because that's really the only barometer that I really have as far as being able to measure where am I? Am I doing too much? Am I not doing enough? There is a happy balance that gets found from time to time.
Now, you mentioned kind of the reset or de-stressing. What are your go-tos when you go, man, I've taken too much on? Like, what are your strategies in terms of finding a little bit more balance?
Yeah, like I try to make breath work and meditation like already a default daily kind of task. Sometimes I take it deep. Sometimes I recognize, yo, like I need a good reset, and I'll either maybe find a friend who does breath work and like actually be in somebody else's class, because I do feel just like a personal trainer. When you go to the gym on your own, you can motivate yourself to one level. but then you have somebody who's going to maybe bring you a little bit deeper than what you'd want to go to. And so I always kind of like my meditation, my breath work are usually my go-tos. And then also like just having regular day-to-day tasks like going to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Like me going to Jiu-Jitsu is also kind of a daily reset. And then every now and then there are times like Lindsay and I just got Lindsay, my wife, we just got a puppy. So I haven't actually been in a couple of weeks, a lot of taking care of that. But then I've been noticing like I'm getting a little bit more stressed, a little bit more easily. And so it's really just kind of managing like the things that I've already put in place and then noticing, oh yeah, like I've been a little bit on edge lately. I haven't been going to jiu-jitsu in a few weeks. Got it. Oh, I've also, because of that, then I haven't been meditating or doing as much breath work. And so it's, you really start to see how things are connected because of, when I feel out of whack, then I start doing less and less of those daily tasks. And so it's always just kind of making sure that I'm doing those things like meditating, breath work, going to jiu-jitsu, spending time outside. So those kind of like bare minimum things that I do feel like every day give like little miniature resets. And so I just try to find out that I'm doing that as much as possible.
I completely resonate with that. And I appreciate that it's this stage in your life. And how old are you again, Joey?
34.
Okay. So you and I are essentially the same age. I'm 35. So, it's interesting that at this stage in your life, you already have like some solid foundational fill the cup type of things that you are aware of that you're like, if I do these things, I know I'm going to be or set me up to be my best self. So, that leads me into more of a understanding now of that next layer of things that you were doing, which is the breath work and the Wim Hof work. How were you first introduced into Wim Hof breathing?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So my whole journey with that started because of jiu-jitsu. In jiu-jitsu, like for people that are listening, Rickson Gracie, who I always joke, like to say he's the Michael Jordan of the sport is an understatement. He's kind of like the Jesus of the sport. He's like this larger than life character. He's undefeated in hundreds, probably thousands of jiu-jitsu matches, undefeated in his MMA career, winning all of his matches by submission. I think they were all by armbar actually. And like, so just like this guy was like, oh, like he's unbeatable. He's like Samson, And so he came and did a seminar at the academy that I train at. And throughout the workshop, he taught like these really basic jujitsu techniques, but then like really like harking on the foundations of everything, just like the little pieces that are often overlooked. And then afterwards talked a lot about the importance of breathing, like really dove into like how important breathing was and talked about it being the second most important thing he learned in his life outside of jiu-jitsu. And I remember thinking, man, all right, I would really love to learn more of that. He talks about his yoga teacher, a man by the name of Orlando Connie, who came up with a form of yoga in Rio. It was called Ginnastica Natural, like initially. Now it's called Bioginnastica, where it incorporated like animal movements and breathing. And like 2 weeks after the seminar, I get a call from a friend saying, hey, I have a friend from Rio. He needs a place to stay while he's in America. He's the head instructor of the Orlando Connie Institute in Rio de Janeiro. Would it be possible for him to stay with you? And I was like, oh, absolutely. Of course, like a small amount of time, but then he ended up staying at the house that me and my friend lived in for 6 months. And every day we'd wake up early, we'd go over these breathing techniques. And so when I teach breath work, I teach the Wim Hof method breath work. But before I even do that, I go into breathing mechanics because most people don't realize there are so many areas within your body that you can breathe through that people just like aren't aware of that. And so I became a little obsessed with that. And then also in that same workshop that Rickson Gracie was teaching, if you've ever seen his documentary Choke, where he's getting ready for all these fights in Japan, one of the things he did to get ready was he would go into the cold rivers in Japan. He'd go up in the mountains and he would just immerse himself in the cold and just breathe through it. And in the seminar that he was teaching, someone asked, like, why do you do that? And he goes, I do it to embrace death. And I was like, that's the coolest answer ever. And so me and my friends, we would jump in our pool during winter where the water was like 50 degrees. And initially it was just like, yo, like, do you think you'd jump in? And eventually we jump in, but then jump right out. I was like, okay, now jump in, try staying for 10 seconds. Then it was a minute. Then it was 2 minutes. Then at some point we were in there for like 15 minutes, but the whole time was just miserable with no techniques or anything like that. So we were already kind of on this path because of Hickson Gracie. It was all about breathing and cold water immersion. And then one day I see the Vice documentary on Wim Hof, and he's showing how he's brought breathwork to the scientific community, showing what the cold does and doing the 2-hour ice bath, and really showing that there's a whole, like how he brought it to science. And there's all these different tools and techniques that he used. And I remember being, oh, like I'm already doing these things, but this guy's all like, he's taking it a lot deeper. He's showing there's all these like tools and techniques. Because me and my friend, we would just jump in and just kind of white knuckle it. I don't know if you've seen Joe Rogan just did 20 minutes in an ice bath, but like 20 minutes of white knuckling it, which is insane. Where I take people in a workshop, we do 2 minutes, but I also show people that you can get in that ice bath and you can fully relax in there. And this isn't disparaging anything Joe Rogan did, because 20 minutes in an ice bath is insane and is quite an amazing feat. But the whole time he's in there, it's like, yo, you can be in there and be more relaxed in that. That's available to you. That's possible. And so I remember like seeing Wim doing that and showing other people. I was like, I want to learn how to do that. I want to learn how to get in there, my body to initially go through that fight or flight, but then recognize that I can take control and stay more relaxed in there. And so I became obsessed with that. And that's why I got into learning it, and then eventually got into teaching it.
Give me the biggest takeaway that you've learned since, your biggest takeaway you've learned since starting Wim Hof breathing personally.
Yeah. And it's more like an insight thing, that because as I made the breathing just a regular habit, there's like this ability that you eventually gain of being able to be an outsider looking in of your own body. So many of us, with between our thoughts and our feelings in our body, we're connected to it, right? When there's anger in the body, it's like, I'm angry or I'm sad. But the more you kind of do breath work, the more you process those emotions, the more you kind of gain a little control of what's going on, the more you can kind of take on that outsider looking in perspective. And you're like, there's a little anger in my body. Oh, there's a little sadness in my body. That it's a completely different experience. That it's not like I'm identified with this feeling, but oh, that feeling is there within my body. And I find that when it's like, oh, there's a feeling there within my body, you can be like, okay, what do I need to do to process it, to express it, how do I transmute it? Versus I'm just angry and all of your actions are out of anger, you're animated by what that emotion is within your body. And I'm not perfect at it, but there's more and more often I'm able to look from that outsider's perspective, see and think, oh, got it. I'm angry right now. And kind of I can sit with that and I can process it a lot easier, because that's all it is. It's just tools as far as processing these different emotions. How do I feel it a little more deeply? And then how do I actively change it? And that's all possible with how we're breathing.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I felt a little bit, but that's also that duality a little bit of like how to accept, but also how to change. Right.
Yeah.
And I think again, there's, some people get very dogmatic in it. It's like, you just allow things to be and then they just automatically change. And you shed the layers of your false self and your authentic self comes through. And then there's the thoughts that like, well, there is no authentic self. You're just a bunch of programs, and you can tell your body and your brain what you want it to be by repetition. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that a lot, because I also recognize that when I'm teaching a workshop, like before the ice bath, when I'm teaching a workshop, like my body, my mind are in alignment, that this is not a big deal thing at all. And I express that to the people like, hey, that you'll be able to get in this ice bath. You're going to be able to relax. Look, and then I always get in first to kind of show, hey, this is what's possible. You can get in there. You don't have to freak out that your breathing maybe changes for a few seconds. Then you can control it and relax. And no part of me has any anxiety of getting in the ice bath while I'm teaching a group. But then if I'm in a group, if it's like, hey, some kind of training, or I'm in a group, there's a little anxiety there, but it's like, all right, there's a group dynamic. I'm fine. It's no big deal. But then when I'm alone and it's just me and the ice bath, I'm filled with that anxiety about going in. Every time it's, I don't want to go in. I don't want to do this right now. And I remember I told a friend this, and he goes, well, which one of them is the real you? I go, oh, they're all the real me. They're all aspects of my personality that exist. They're all, when I'm in a group of people, like I call upon the performer element of me. That's like, okay, now that this part's in charge, there's no anxiety in the ice bath. I get to use my party trick of getting into the ice bath with having really no emotion about it. But then, yeah, without that, other aspects of my personality take over. And it is hard to see like which one of those is like the real you. I feel that, and this could be a whole other conversation, but like sometimes like different plant medicines have been very good as far as accessing like, oh, that's the essence of me. Yeah, it's not these habits. It's not even this physical body, but, oh, like I've tuned in to the actual essence of me. It's a very rare thing to actually get to directly tune into. But then everything else, as far as having these other tools and techniques, at least get you to various aspects of it, or at least get you into the more empowered, as you said, programming of yourself.
So what is the biggest thing that you've learned since teaching Wim Hof breathing and ice baths?
That you can never tell who's going to have an easy time in that ice bath, or even with the breath work. I used to think like, oh, like, here's like a big, strong guy. Oh, like you're an MMA fighter. Okay, cool. You're going to do fine. Oh, like you're like a 75-year-old woman. Okay, I'm going to keep an eye on you. But it's completely unpredictable. And also actually the fact that women have a much easier time in the ice bath. And in my workshops, mothers, if you've ever had children, are undefeated. The ice bath is no mother has ever left the ice bath early. And so
yeah, there's something about having to, give birth to a child that, inherently you're okay with pain.
Yeah. And it's also, it's like the surrender. It's the recognizing, God, my body's going through a process. Like if I surrender to it, it'll do its thing and eventually will subside. But it's the men that like, what the hell is going on? And say, because it's a processing of an emotion. And I feel women do process their emotions much better than men, whether it's a learned thing of, oh, like men don't cry, suppress it. It could also be a biological thing. I don't know, right? What started first, like the chicken or the egg. But there is like something that in my experience with like men, they definitely want to fight the ice bath. So I need a little bit more reminding them that it's about surrender. And like mothers undefeated in it. And then also when I do the breath work, if I ever do it and it's only men, that's when I get the most emotional releases, the most times people cry, because whatever it is, same thing when men are in a room of women, sometimes maybe there's an element of suppressing that emotion. Once again, I don't know if this is a learned or a biological behavior, but when it's only men in the room, it's like the collective years of suppressed emotion get to come out, and it's where I get the most crying. And if you are listening to this podcast and think, why would I want to cry? This is a man. It's like we're constantly stuffing that in. Like you will feel lighter in letting go of these emotions. And anytime people cry from doing breath work, 99% of the time, it's like the beautiful, like, wow, what an amazing experience this life is. I'm never taking time to appreciate it. It's always like that kind of cry as opposed to like being sad or anything like that. It's an important thing to express and release.
It's interesting because like, as you look at it, like, why does this thing work? And I think one of the biggest reasons why it does is uh, as a person who's a biohacker slash, self-improvement person who wants to be the best version of myself, I think a lot of those pursuits have some layer of egoic nature to it. Like, I'm going to control my breakthroughs. I'm going to find what I want, that kind of thing. But when you're brought into breath work, it's almost as if you're so in the moment that you finally get to access some of the things that your ego and your mind didn't allow you to see.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And like I feel with the breath work, especially because you're going to different parts of your brain, you're literally getting out of that part of your brain. That's like the prefrontal cortex, which is it's the human part. It's this amazing part of our brain that allows us to, the only animals that can look in the future. What do I want tomorrow to look like? What do I want next week, next month? And we can plot and plan, and it's beautiful. But as you said, it's a lot of that is like the ego thinking like, what do I want this world to look like in the next couple of days, months, weeks, years, whatever. And to breathe in a way that shuts up. You actually get out of that prefrontal cortex and you connect deeper to that limbic system, the reptilian and mammalian parts of your brain, that you're more in like the feeling part of your brain. Like, oh, what's going on in this moment? We talk so much, especially in the spiritual world, of you got to get out of your mind and into the moment. And like contextually, what does that mean to be in the moment? How are you're always on some level in the moment, but through breath work, I've found like, oh, this is what it means to be in the moment, as that mental chatter of, oh, like what, the room's a little hot right now. What's like going on here? There's always some kind of narrator going on, and to have it just shut up, even just for a little bit, and to actually be in the moment, that like the slightest sounds far away becomes so much clearer. The slightest, like there's this emotion is being in my body, that you become just so much more aware of everything that's going on, which is typically why people have some kind of emotional release. It's like a very powerful thing to recognize that, to be actually in the moment and then, like this is what it means to be in the moment,
So juxtaposing that with jujitsu in terms of, because you do a bit of teaching as well of jujitsu now, because, you'll never say it yourself, and probably no black belt will say it themselves, but Joey is a black belt in Brazilian jiu-jitsu, which there's few people I have on the podcast that I know I can probably handle. I don't know if I can handle Joey. And by I don't think, I probably will die within the first 30 seconds of messing with Joey. But at least, I'll be able to have a nice last few breaths knowing that he'll be gentle as he asphyxiates me. But if someone wants to first get into jiu-jitsu, like what's the recommendation you have for somebody? Because it is becoming more in vogue. You're seeing many more jiu-jitsu studios popping up here and there. Like, what's your recommendation in terms of somebody who first wants to get into it?
Yeah, I'm just kind of looking for places nearby, right? Everyone has kind of different motivating factors, whether you want to lose weight, find a cool community of people, maybe you want to be an active competitor, whatever it is. So kind of finding what are your priorities, what would get you into it. Maybe there's an okay school 5 minutes from you, but that's a really easy, convenient thing. But there's a great school half an hour away. Are you going to be willing to make that drive? So kind of knowing what.
Joe, you're the half hour to 2 hour drive kind of guy, aren't you?
Oh yeah. I'll drive.
I'll go to Tijuana, Mexico to get the best jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. If I know there's good jiu-jitsu far away, but it's like a possible drive, I'm there. And yeah, so like finding what your priority is as far as like that training goes, and just like finding a nearby school and just trying it out. And then also going in with the expectation that you're probably going to be pretty bad at it initially. And like that goes with any skill set. No one picks up a guitar and like knows how to play some kind of epic song from like the first get-go. You have to suck at it a little bit and be okay with that. The only thing is with jujitsu, like you sucking at it puts you, especially with men, puts you in direct like view of the truth. That is like, oh, this guy or this woman who weighs 100 pounds could do whatever they want to me. And that's a tough thing for the ego to get through, but like you will experience that in jujitsu. And kind of, I find that jujitsu gives you that good ego equilibrium, that you're going to be very humbled in getting beat up by people that you don't think should be able to beat you up. But then you also get to do that to other people. You will find yourself in positions that your eyes and your mind will see something like, oh, that dude would for sure destroy me. And then you get to tap them out sometimes. That does happen. And so recognizing that in the beginning, you're probably not going to be as good as maybe you think you are, especially if you're a man who's played football and you've lifted weights and you've done all these things that should make you a tough person, but there's a whole extra element of things happening. And so being okay with being tapped out by people that you don't feel should be able to tap you out. And then knowing that it's usually about like three months is usually what I find is that people will recognize like their own improvement. The truth is like 2 weeks in, like as a black belt, if somebody comes in brand new as a white belt, in 2 weeks, I'll be like, oh, you're getting better. You won't notice that, but other people will start to notice it. But in 3 months, you'll start to notice it. You'll start to notice you move more intuitively, that you start like, oh, I've been in this position before. I know what to do. And so just give it a little bit of time, but also just knowing in the beginning, you're going to get tapped out by people, and that's okay.
As far as Wim Hof breathing and ice baths, who is it for and who is it not for?
Like, I mean, I'll start with who it's not for. Like the people that it's not for probably know that it's not for them as far as like health conditions go. Like if you have like Raynaud's disease to a certain extent, like, but these people know, oh yeah, I'm not supposed to come into contact with anything cold. If you have certain heart conditions, to the point where it's like, oh, if I work out a little bit too hard, I'm putting myself in danger. So little things like that. And then also like the breath work, if you have like epilepsy or anything like that, anything that could potentially cause seizures, probably best to avoid it. But once again, these are all probably people that already from the get-go know, oh, I'm not going to do that because that could influence this thing I already have in a negative way. But other than that, I'd say it's for everybody, that, you know, that people that don't even think that they'd get anything out of it. My favorite thing in doing my workshops is every now and then there'll be, and it's usually like an East Coast kind of guy, but it's like not always an East Coast guy, but it's like always like a man that's always like that I can feel was like maybe brought there by their girlfriend or some friend said, dude, just give it a shot. I know that you don't get it right now, but just give it a shot. And I've seen, like, I see it in their face as I'm talking. They're like, this is stupid. But then they do the breath work and they always come back different. Because the beautiful thing about it is, as a fan of the personal development world, every now and then you find a speaker that resonates with what you're saying, that changes your perspective. And just like through their words and their energy, they can change how you live your life to some extent. But with the breath work, if you're like immune to that, if you've gone to a Tony Robbins event and you're like, this is dumb, like, cool, just do this breathing, because the breathing itself will tune you into a version of yourself that you can't not see a bigger thing going on. Every time, I've never had anybody do the breath work and been like, yeah, that was a waste of my time. Never. Because if you're actually doing it, you're going to go into a very powerful place. And so, yeah, just like I say that the breath work is for anybody. And same thing with the ice baths. And also, like, these things they're very beneficial towards your health with the breath work and the ice bath. And then just like the powerful meditation you find within the breath work as you get out of that prefrontal cortex and you really go into the moment. And then also the powerful meditation you get within the ice bath, because I feel if you're just someone who's like, all right, just meditate, just close your eyes and do nothing, just allow whatever comes up to come up. Because essentially within that kind of meditation, you find just the ebbs and flows of energy in your body. You'll notice you sit for an hour, you'll have times where you're anxious, you'll have times where you're relaxed. You'll go through the whole spectrum of human emotion, but it's pretty light. It's nice and easy waves, where an ice bath makes those waves very intense. You go through the upper limits of anxiety, but you can also find the upper limits of calm. You can be in there and be like, oh God, I've seen people's heart rate drop to about 40 beats per minute in the ice bath. So same thing. It's just like a very powerful way of connecting to meditation.
Joey, you are in the personal development community and you're a heck of a coach. Advice for your 20-year-old self.
Ooh, that's a good one. Advice for my 20-year-old self, man, just relax. Like, this isn't, you don't need to have all the answers right now. In fact, you're probably never going to have all the answers. Enjoy the journey. And yeah, like 30 is not an old person. So like you're not approaching like your final years as you hit 30 without knowing everything. So yeah, just like relax. Life's going to throw you a lot of interesting situations. And yeah, but just like allow that, you can try to have everything in your mind the way it's supposed to be. And none of it will end up that way, because it's going to be better.
I love that. Joey, you have a lot going on. What are the best ways that we can get more of old Joey Hauss. Damn it.
Hauss. Like when
Tell
you
me
live in.
Hauss.
Yeah.
Why
But
did I wrote it down too? Hauss.
Yeah. It is Hauss, and I've made myself very easy to find. Instagram, simply at Joey Hauss, Hauss. Website, joeyhauss.com. Email, joey@joeyhauss.com. So as I said, I want to make it as easy to find me as possible. And yeah, by putting my name into Google like that, you'll find me somehow, some way.
Any workshops coming up in the near future there, Joey?
My wife is telling me I have Murrieta, California on November 6th. But yeah, I'm also available all the time for corporate gigs or anything like that. If you have a retreat or some kind of community you want to serve with some breath work and ice baths, I'm your guy.
Absolutely. And also you can find him on the Evolving Out Loud community. Absolutely everything past Joey not only leads the breath work, but also Monday meditations, and then also the it's totally possible on Tuesday nights as well. So he and his wife are some integral pieces to the puzzle of the Evolving Out Loud community. And they are more valuable and better off with them. Let me tell you.
Appreciate that. Yeah. And even just like that, like the totally possible calls, like little things like that, just kind of reframing your reality. It's a very important tool to develop.
Last thing before we go, Joey, if we were to say, if I were to tell you 5 years ago, or maybe even when you were in the Marines, that you were going to be leading a community of people who are looking to better themselves through meditation, breath work, ice baths, and some Brazilian jiu-jitsu, what would you have said?
Man, I would not have seen this for myself, especially, being a Marine. And then it's also like time in between. I was just a bartender, I did not see this for myself. I'm glad that this was the path that I ended up going. And I feel if it was just a few years after that, it would have made a little more sense. But especially during my time in the Marines, this would have been a very crazy thing for me to hear. I would have been excited about it though.
Joey Hauss, phoning in from Disneyland. Thank you so much for your time there, Joey.
Don, this has been a pleasure, man.
Awesome, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
Stay safe. Thank you so much again to Joey for coming on to today's podcast and sharing his wealth of knowledge about breathwork, ice baths, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with this community. Again, if you're new to the community, make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on all of our latest content. Please give us a rating online of 5 stars. It helps grow the podcast. Share it with a friend, and we'll see you next time with a brand new episode of the Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity Podcast.